right, welcome back. So the title of this mini lecture is War in North Africa, and we're going to be talking about 5 things that you need to know about as you go to research and learn and read more about this topic. There's a lot to it, so it's good to get a starter. All right, let's dig into it. The first thing that we need to know about is the American Army. So the U.S. military, when it went to war after December 7th, 1941, is going to be an army for the first year or so that is significantly focused on increasing its numbers, increasing its materiel, building up ships and tanks and trucks. So it's going to have a lot of growing pains to go through. And those growing pains, in many ways, were on display in the North African campaign. It is a campaign that struggles with resources. It is a campaign that struggles with logistics, but it's a successful campaign. They're able to carry out a combined amphibious assault and eventually accomplish their objectives. But again, this wasn't without difficulty. If you're interested in learning more about the American Army in North Africa, I'd suggest the books by Rick Atkinson, journalist turned historian. He's a good resource for this. Secondly, Operation Torch. Operation Torch was the Allied invasion of North Africa. Now, when we say North Africa, there's a few different countries that we're talking about, but we're referring to places like modern Libya and Tunisia. And it begins in November of 1942. Many of the soldiers are American, some of them are British, and the process was to kind of push off German forces, the Afrika Korps led by Erwin Rommel, Italian forces, as well as Vichy French forces, or Free French forces. So yes, we do fight the French in World War II for a short period of time. Now, the third thing for us to know about as it relates to war in North Africa would be Casablanca. Not the movie, not the movie. So there was a conference in Casablanca in early 1943 between Winston Churchill and President Roosevelt. Now, President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill had already met a number of times, and the conference in Casablanca was one of many that they would have throughout the war. But this particular conference mattered not only for the North African campaigns, but it mattered for the coming campaigns as well in Europe. Remember, the decision to attack German forces in North Africa was partly based on a desire not to attack German forces in Western Europe in late 1942 and early 1943. So, Casablanca was kind of a way for the Allies to figure out what they were going to do next. Now, Stalin would obviously like us to take some of the burden off of his forces, but again, I think what we eventually know is that the Allies are going to turn their attentions to Sicily and Italy in 1943, and then eventually, of course, to France in 1944. Fourth, Patton. General George Patton is a pretty famous and colorful character in the American experience, especially during World War II. He's a former Olympic athlete, was in World War I, let's not kid ourselves, he got famous because after World War II he had a movie made after him and George C. Scott played him. But during World War II, he was an outspoken general, noted for the kind of pistols that he would wear, his colorful language. Oh, did he love a good 4-letter word. But Patton was one of the commanding generals in the early efforts in North Africa, is someone who distinguishes himself, is noted for the Battle of El Guitar and a few others. But of course, by 1943, in the Sicily campaign and elsewhere, Patton also runs into a great deal of trouble, partly because he has no respect for soldiers who struggle with PTSD, and he assaulted them. So that also happened. All right, fifth, other thing that maybe we should know about when thinking about these campaigns and these people and all of this would be Rommel and the Afrika Korps. Erwin Rommel, General Erwin Rommel, was a German general who eventually dies later in World War II, partly at the hands of Hitler's administration. And the Afrika Korps was that main unit of German forces that is successful, at least initially, in the early years of the war, in this part of the world. Now, someone like Rommel, it's good to know that there are myths kind of versus realities. The myth typically was that he was a really great combat leader and that he wasn't really political at all. Not so much. Kind of rose based on supporting Hitler and stuff like that. And is he effective? Yeah, in the early years of the war, but the question is what kind of opposition is he facing? So maybe not as amazing as the History Channel makes him out to be. All right, thanks so much.